Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Development Control B Committee. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that you maintain social distancing from all other persons whilst in the chamber and in the communal areas. Please ensure that you wear a face covering at all times unless you are sitting down or you are exempt from doing so, and that you please use the hand sanitizer and wipes provided. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations while others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting and speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you will be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. We will be using e-voting for this meeting on the Modern Gov app. So please could members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I would like to remind everybody present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential items or exempt items. If you make a representation of the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. If you hear the alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium, the ground floor and walkways. If you are in the atrium at any time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs and not the lifts. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. So, introductions. We have Ian Dupre, our legal advisor.
Morning, Madam Chair.
Morning. John Pateman-G, the area planning manager. Robert Carmichael, governance officer. And case officers Vincent Pearce and Alex Bredman. And we have ward members today. Present at the moment is Councillor Otten and Councillor Flatman sitting up there at the back. Thank you. So can we move to the agenda, please? Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies or substitutions this morning.
To receive any declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members, any to declare? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is in relation to 02617. Laxfield is a parish within my county council division, and where I'm aware this application has been discussed at parish meetings, but prior to my knowledge of it coming to this committee.
Thank you. Any further ones? Councillor Muller, please.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I should declare I'm Vice Chair of the Stowmarket Town Council Planning Committee, so the third application, Stowmarket, would have come before our committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further ones? No? Thank you. Declarations of lobbying. Well, we've certainly been lobbied on the first one, and I think we had something on the second one as well, didn't we? Yeah, all of us. Is that all of us? Are we unanimous? Thank you. Getting lots of nods. Thank you. Declarations of personal site visits. Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get to the Felsham official site visit, but I did go there yesterday and have a look at it. Thank you.
Did you go on site? Did you have permission to go on site?
What I did was drive into the car park and drive out again, just to have a look at the access. So, yeah.
So you had a good drive in and out. That was good. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September. Are there any points regarding accuracy of the minutes, please? There are none. So can I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Muller's first and Councillor Caston's caught my eye as well, so proposer and seconder, please. Can we have a vote on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress in the Modern.gov app. Councillor Carson, you haven't logged in yet. Will you be logging in, or do you want me to take your vote verbally?
I just have, thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Councillor.
We all voted.
Just waiting on, because I haven't got Councillor Carson logged in at the moment.
Can I do it verbally? Sorry,
Yes, sir.
it's taken a little bit longer than I thought.
Full for Councillor Carson, and Councillor Norris, I don't have your vote.
Councillor Norris,
Yes, I'm just going.
we can take a verbal if you're having difficulty.
Thank you, Chair. All votes received in that is a unanimous vote for.
And I'll sign them at an appropriate moment. Thank you very much. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
And the schedule of applications in the order they appear. So we will be hearing the first application, which is DC 21-02924, land to the rear of the Six Bells, Church Road, Felsham. And so now John Pateman G, case officer, to introduce this to us, please.
Thank you. So this application is for the erection of 2 detached dwellings with associated parking and landscaping. It's a full application, so all the details are before us in that context, and it is in Felsham. This was the subject of a member site visit a week ago. This is an aerial photograph just to show you where we are, and it's the area under the mesh there. Nothing's working. Let's try again. Just a wider context, we have the green on the left to the west. We have it is all in conservation area, but you'll see that in a moment. We have a fairly historical environment to the left and to the south of the site, with the church to the south as well. And we have a more recent housing development to the east. Google has slightly more up-to-date photos in terms of aerials, so just to put that into context, I'll find a mic. So of course the site is essentially this area here at the back of the public house itself. The public house, the main bulk of it is just there. It also has a rear car park that members saw while they were on site. So the official red line plan. This involves not only the site itself, but a slight change to the public house car park to allow for at least two additional parking area spaces to replace the 2 likely to be lost, obviously with a drive being put in to get access to the rear. So the expansion of the pub is secured by your recommendation. Seems a little delayed. I might not be... I'll see how it goes. I'll press it a bit harder. Just give it a second. If it carries on, I'll come. So the constraints plan, the application site is within the settlement boundary and conservation area. The Six Bells pub itself is Grade 2 listed, and there are other listed buildings nearby. Those are the orange buildings as shown on this plan. Wrong mouse, this one. And to the south is the church, which is Grade 2 star listed as well, and that's why it's in the red colour. Might need batteries. Have I got to point it a direction particularly? Is that a matter of range of it?
No, it has not. If you want to use the right click and use it.
Oh, can I do it with the mouse, can I?
If you do right click and then
Oh, I see, right, okay. Shall I just wait a moment or shall I continue?
Continue with the mouse.
I can continue with the mouse. I
Just
think.
while.
No problem. Lost my dread. So this again is a plan just to show where the listed buildings are. They're the ones in orange. We are in the conservation area and settlement boundary, and the site. Thank you. Let's get a bit closer. Right, start again. So we're in the conservation area. These are the listed buildings. They're in yellow, and that's just the site is the area just in here. This is now working, so I'm going to hit this one because it's easier. Great. Here's the site layout. The site layout, a long history of refusals as reported in your papers. But to get to this proposal, members may remember the last application for this one, which was for 3 houses, and there was no issues on access, heritage, and principle. It was refused on the basis of being overly cramped and matters of poor design. This application for 2 seeks to address that position and is a revised design on that basis. Updated layout has been provided by the applicant. There's no difference from the ones you've seen before, other than you will note that the extension to the neighbouring property has now been included, and it's a little clearer because it's a bit closer. Each L dwelling is almost 8.1 metres high, around 5 metres to the eaves, excluding chimneys. These are slightly taller than the previous 3 refused, which were all around 7.9, 7.6 and 7.4, with a 0.2 to 0.7 metre difference, but they match the eaves heights of those previous refused development. The height, though, is not considered out of context with the adjacent estate or the public house. And I don't know if it's clear on this particular slide, the public house line, which is there, is to indicate the height of the public house. And on the other side, we have the neighbouring property that members saw on site with the extension. I can point it out in photos in a moment, and its relevant lines. Obviously, that's not the positioning of these buildings in context with these houses. That's just to line up those elevations in terms of comparison of heights. So the large extension of the neighbouring house was noted and could be clearly seen on site at the members' site visit. So we have landscaping. Members will note that some trees in the centre would be removed in order to allow the driveway to come forward, and we have no objection from the TUI officer on that basis. And we have the designs of the individual properties. Essentially, the designs take cues from the public house itself, which offer flint work detailing and on generous plots with garaging to the sides to avoid being dominant. So this is the public house itself. We've all seen it now. I'll just go through these photos. That's the a picture of the green in the background and the corner as you come round to the public house. And that's to complete the corner. That's the entrance to the public house and car park. Again, various pictures. And standing within the site. So the extension of the neighbouring property mentioned is the one on the left there. And that's the site within the site. And that is the far east boundary. And that's the clump of trees, some of which within the centre of that would need to be removed in order to have a driveway come through. And that's back to the aerial. So obviously one of the discussion points of this application is the point of access. This is the highways plan provided by Suffolk County Council's highways. The green area is the highway land. That is what the Highways Authority consider to be within their scope of control and ownership. This obviously, as you can see, varies with width as you go along the road. The visibility of an access is a point taken from the edge of the carriageway. Carriageway is not the same as highway land. It could include highway verge, footway, and various uses in the highway land. So the edge of the carriageway is a different concept to what is highway land. However, edge of carriageway is not a defined term. Now, we rely on drawings, standard drawings provided by Suffolk County Council, which refer to the edge of the carriageway, but they don't define what the edge of carriageway should be. Doing a little bit of research, central government, for the purposes of traffic signs guidance, defines the edge of carriageway as being defined by markings or defined by the curb. Neither of those actually apply in this case because there are no markings and there is no curb. In my normal experience, there's a logical edge of carriageway, but I think in this case that has been a matter of debate. So, if you take the wall, the listed wall, just to the edge of the highway as the point of reference, as the point you take a visibility from, there would be no visibility available for this current public house, because essentially 2.4 metres back, you'd be looking to the right and straight through a current wall that's already there. You wouldn't be able to see past it. So if you take the grass bank and continue the line, as the grass bank is an obstacle in the highway, and continue the line around that might be logical, you still do not achieve the guidance set by highways. You might gain around about 20 metres of visibility, but as the curve continues round, you'd still be staring at a brick wall in the way because you wouldn't be able to see across. The next choice you have is to consider how reasonable do you pull out that would not conflict with the passing traffic itself. Now, as the parked cars available on site in the member site visit demonstrated, the road is actually quite wide. It is beyond the standard 5.5 metre standard road that highways would now seek in new housing estates, for example, for the main estate road. So, thus, there's a fair degree of allowance to allow a car to pull out without conflict with passing traffic. And this is the position that the Highways Authority have taken in this case, which has resulted in this drawing based on those principles. This still doesn't achieve 43 metres in one direction, it only achieves 40 metres. And of course we'd need to cut back the vegetation that is there a little as well. This is supported by the Highways Authority. It is a judgment in terms of whether that is good or not. But there is no evidence of serious, slight or fatal accidents in the last 22 years, which is as far back as records we've got. We also have this as an existing access, and they all weigh in the balance. On this occasion, no harm is identified by heritage. Highways are recommended conditions, but it is noted that the access remains a point of concern. It is agreed that access visibility to the west is short by 3 metres to meet the current standard guidance of the Highways Authority for a 30-mile-an-hour road. And Highways have specifically referenced this as in part of their response and taken it into account. However, they do consider, and this is agreed by planning officers, that with a planning condition to impose to achieve the 40 metres, it means it will be an improvement to the current provision available and an improvement for the public house users as well as the two houses. This is now a proposal for 2 bespoke dwellings. They use the existing drive to avoid any heritage concern. This will alter views into the site from existing gardens, but given the distance and siting, not considered to be significant in itself to be intrusive to warrant refusal. We now have got the Ecology Report sought, as referred to in your papers, and referred to as part of the recommendation, but the recommendation is to remain the same as a delegated approval to allow officers to complete the review of this report and add any conditions on ecology as necessary. And on that basis, I conclude.
Thank you for that, John. And Councillor Stringer is straight out of the trap before I ask the question. Bless you.
Sorry, Chair.
Your question to the officer,
Yeah,
please.
sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Chair. I just wanted to expand on what I see as a conflict between page 55 and page 65. Page 65 is where you were telling me that highways owned up until the green area that you shaded on a map. Yet the edge of the carriageway for visibility purposes was the black dotted line shown on page 65, yet the red line on page 55 doesn't go as far as the dotted black line, therefore we couldn't enforce marking the edge of the carriageway as part of this application. If we did then mark it along the black dotted line, that would allow people the delineated space to then park in front of the pub, which would then obliterate the visibility in the other direction. So I think I'm in a unique position here of having been on a site visit.
We have the question.
Yeah. Can you actually explain the differences? Because having driven it and looked at it, I couldn't see where the edge of the carriageway was in terms of if I was a visitor to the pub or whatever or a visitor coming out of these proposed new dwellings. Where is the edge of the carriageway and how can it be delineated?
So the most up-to-date highways plan I got was the one I put on the screen. That green area is what the highways consider to be in their control. I don't have an edge of highway. That's pretty much my point. There isn't one. It's a blurry line. So where you take a logical point to put a visibility display is a matter of debate. Ultimately, the default here is this pub has been in operation for I don't know how long, without incident that we are aware of.
Can I just interrupt there as your question may develop a little more, but it must be a question. Am I right in thinking that there was some debate at some time about putting line markings and it was decided not to?
Yes.
I think I think that's where we are on that one, Councillor Stringer.
The previous application, for one moment, the lines were proposed to effectively define where the edge of carriageway could be, but that was opposed because it would potentially have a detrimental effect on the character of the conservation area in terms of visual appearance. So the highways agreed they weren't necessary, and therefore that was removed from the scheme.
So that's the answer to sort of that question at the moment, Councillor Stringer, unless there's a further question rather than debate. We can bring it into debate later, of course.
So what you're telling me is the edge of the agreed edge of the carriageway could be delineated if we could get over the heritage concern.
It wasn't Heritage that objected, was it?
It was a matter of the local residents objected to the idea of putting lines on the plan, on the road, and therefore on the discussion with the Highways Authority at the time, the Highways didn't feel they were necessary, and therefore we did not pursue that any further. No correspondence with Heritage at that time was carried out.
So can we use that in debate later, Councillor Stringer? Thank you. Any further questions for the planning officer? Councillor Warboys and then Councillor Custon. Thank you.
Wells is a listed building. I must confess this question was prompted by email I received which contained copies of replies from the Heritage Officer regarding the setting not just of Chestnut Tree Farm, I think it is, which is referred to in the document, but also the setting of the 6 bells. But that's not in these documents.
I've not seen the email that you're referring
Can I
to.
interrupt you on that one? Those emails that came to us were actually from the previous applications, and if you look at the dates of them, they have been superseded by the Heritage Officer has said that any previous issues had now been overcome. If you look at the documents that have been sent in our papers, and you're referring to the documents that were sent last night or yesterday afternoon, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes. And what they were heritage documents for the previous application, and they're dated, I forget what date they were, I did write them down and brought them with me, but where they are in my papers. But they were dated 2010. The 2020, sorry, the heritage ones, and then there's one from the Heritage Officer now in our papers, which says that any previous heritage issues had been overcome by this application. So I think we need to be clear on what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
And John wouldn't have got that because we only got that as lobbying. He wouldn't have got that. He certainly didn't get it from me anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Whether you accept the result is up to you to decide, but that's what the answer is.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Councillor Carston?
Thank you very much. I read in the paper the Ecology Report wasn't fully completed. Has that been completed now, or?
Yes, I have now received that. We, like I said in my recommendation, we are maintaining our recommendation just so we can have a final look through it. And if there's any, and it gives us also the ability to add any further conditions on ecology as necessary. But having read through it, there's nothing of concern. It is just a matter of, we're still saying, please delegate approval to us just to add conditions as necessary on that basis.
In the recommendation, it talks about the details of street and external lighting. Is that affected by the recent motion that the council passed concerning lighting, which is more sensitive to wildlife?
No, I've always tried to stop lighting wherever possible for the last several years. So it's actually my preference to avoid street lighting. In this context, you're in the middle of the conservation area, you're in the middle of the back of all those houses. So to put excessive lighting there would be detrimental to amenity more than anything else, I would suggest. They're fairly used to a dark environment at the back there, at the back of their houses. So that is why we sought to reduce potential lighting from any external lighting.
Thank you.
So if we've now finished with questions of the officer, we now have a public speaker. So we invite the Parish Council, Hayley Nunn, and you have 3 minutes if you'd like to come forward and speak, please. Or no, you're there and speak. Yeah, that's you. Press the button if you would.
The proposed development is at the very core of the village centre and the Article 4 conservation area. This area of the village has designated heritage assets in the Six Bells, St Peter's Church and the 2 neighbouring properties, as well as some non-designated assets, most of which would overlook the proposed development. The OS map of 1885 shows the space jointly bounded with the Six Bells and Three Ways House. Little has changed here since the publication of this map, and many of the views remain the same and should be preserved. LP 21 of the submitted new joint local plan is clear in demonstrating the important contribution heritage assets make to the character and appearance of an area. This historic triangle reinforces a sense of local identity, and this application, with even taller buildings proposed, does nothing to negate our concerns. Your policy refers to 7,000 listed buildings and 60 conservation areas, and its intention to preserve these is clear. Felsham should not be the exception. LP 19 refers to the importance of the relationship between landscape and the historic environment, detailing that the character of the landscape is influenced by its historic environment, as well as traditional villages, and that the landscape can be important to the setting of a historic asset. This is absolutely true of Felsham, Six Bells and St Peter's Church. LP 13 of your plan focuses on safeguarding the economy. The hospitality industry has more than ever needed outside space. The Six Bells has both historically and recently utilised the meadow for functions, and this land is even more important now. Removing this facility from the Six Bells by building will undoubtedly impose a negative effect on its trade and ability to maximise its potential. LP 13 directly refers to protecting the operation of existing businesses and only approving where there is no amenity conflict arising from the development. In this case, there is a direct conflict because of the loss of the land, but also the sharing of construction access with trade access. Therefore, once again, this application directly conflicts with your own planning policy. Your plan talks of delivering appropriate housing. In this case, we do not consider this housing appropriate. Your joint local plan is there for a reason, to form the basis for considering applications. Your plan focuses on sustaining economic growth, including sectors such as hospitality, which now more than ever need support. There is no ambiguity in your joint local plan. Its intentions are clear: to enhance and at the very least sustain economies, maintain or enhance the well-being of communities, whilst preserving the heritage and the environment. This application for the land at the Six Bells is in direct conflict with your very own plan, and for this reason I implore you to stand by your own policy documentation and help Felsham enhance our precious historic assets, our rural economy, and preserve the well-being of our beloved community.
Do we have any questions for the Parish Council? Lady? No? I just have a question. I know you haven't alluded to it specifically, but on page 35 you've sent us some photographs of some sheep. When was that taken, please? Because when we went on the site visit, it was clearly very overgrown and hadn't been used for some considerable time.
The sheep wasn't this year. This year was the family day, which was the band, etc. The sheep racing was, I think it was 2013, 2014.
Oh, some time ago.
The sheep
Yes.
racing was,
Yes,
yes.
thank you.
More recently it's bands.
Yes, and the site was quite overgrown. I climbed over tyres and all sorts of things going in there. When was that last used?
June.
But was that to the right where it's a little clearer?
No, because I think the children played in the other bit.
Right.
I didn't actually go, I must confess.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. No further questions? No. Thank you. If you switch that off. So we now have the objector, Nicholas Panyai. If you would come to your position, please. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. As stated at the last committee and in the email sent to you, my Freedom of Information request to Labour Council found the Heritage Report and emails between Planning and Highways, which were never submitted onto the planning portal or disclosed at the last Planning Committee meeting. You, the committee members, were misled in the previous application when the Heritage Report with numerous concerns was not disclosed, and an alternative Heritage Report with all the concerns removed was submitted onto the planning portal instead. However, all the concerns raised in the missing Heritage Report are still relevant and have a significant bearing on this application, and they need to be raised, questioned and addressed by this committee. You, the committee members, were also unaware of the emails sent from planning putting pressure on Highways to support the use of the pub access for the new houses, and even suggested how Highways could justify the use of the access, even though Highways had consistently maintained that in numerous emails that the existing access is considered substandard due to the lack of visibility. Yet 20 minutes later, Highways sent an email back to planning saying that the access could meet visibilities. How is this possible when there have been no changes or improvements to the access? How can we have trust in planning and Highways when documents are not disclosed to the planning committee for scrutiny or made public in what is meant to be an open consultation process? How can you, the planning committee members, make a balanced and fair decision without all the information when documents are not disclosed that have a significant bearing on the application? Fire and Rescue Services, in their response, refers to the National Planning Section 112D, which allows for the efficient delivery of goods and access by service and emergency vehicles, and the 2010 Building Regulations, Fire Safety Section B513, Vehicle Access, paragraph 13.4, which says that dead-end access routes require longer than 20 metres require turning facilities. This cannot be achieved in this application and is being totally ignored by planning and Highways. A previous appeal inspectorate decision from 2015 for building one house on the land adjacent to the pub was refused for a number of reasons. In particular, paragraph 7, which stated that I consider its development as proposed, which would infill the area of land between the three-ways cottage and the outbuildings of the public house, would have a materially detrimental effect on the setting of the adjacent listed building and the character and appearance of the area. This still applies, even more so in this application, due to the large scale and the height of the proposed new houses. This application...
Can you now finish, please? You're on to your 3 minutes. Thank you.
This application fails to meet so many national planning and local policies, as detailed in my email too, which are too many to list in my allocated 3 minutes. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, I think you've now finished on a very good point there. Thank you very much indeed. John just wants to say something before we come to questions. Yes, John?
Thank you. Just in respect of some of that information, that is, a lot of that information refers to previous applications and not the application before members, and I urge members to bear that in mind. If the gentleman has any concerns about the professionalism of officers, that includes me, or any other matter in that regard, he is welcome to put forward a complaint to separately be dealt with by the council. And I should also point out that there is currently an appeal running on the 3 houses that were refused, and if they have any objections they wish to maintain for that appeal, they do need to contact the Planning Inspectorate and take that further forward. Just to add that, thank you.
And that's an advisory for your good self, so you need to follow that up should you desire to do so. Right, so can you switch your microphone off, please? Thank you. Do we have any questions for the objector? No. Thank you very much indeed for your presentation. Thank you. We don't seem to have a supporter, and so we now come to the applicant's agent. And so if you would like to step forward, Jeremy Heppel, I believe it is. Oh, well, no, you're there, sorry. Normally people are behind the thing and then we ask them to step forward, so I don't know how come you've sneaked in. All of you, welcome. So if you'd like to have a go, thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair and members, and thank you for inviting me to address you. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, the Cordage Group, a family-owned development company. You will have received via email from the applicant in the last couple of days a 2-page summary of the application, highlighting the merits of the scheme and also addressing the issues which were raised at last week's committee site visit, namely the suitability of the access and the height of the proposed houses. Dealing with the access arrangements first, it was observed on the site visit that traffic speeds are low in the vicinity of the site, underscoring the good accident safety record of the existing pub access. Furthermore, it was noted that visibility for drivers exiting the site can be significantly improved by trimming back vegetation to the west of the access on land within the ownership of the pub. Thus, the development offers a significant betterment for an already well-used and safe access. It is on this basis that the Highway Authority supports the planning application. Turning to the height of the dwellings, the applicant has prepared a cross-section of the proposed houses relative to Maple Cottage, including its recently built extension and the 6 bells. And this is the illustration that the case officer showed to you. The section illustrates that the eaves height of the proposed dwellings will be the same as Maple Cottage, and that the ridge height of the dwellings, i.e. their total height, will be exactly the same as the 6 bells, thereby clearly establishing that the proposed dwellings are of an appropriate scale for the area. To conclude, this application overcomes the concerns raised by committee with the previous application for 3 dwellings, which related solely to the design and layout of the scheme. It should be noted that access was not a reason for refusal on the previous application. Turning to the recommendation on your agenda, as you've heard, the required ecological surveys have been completed and found no evidence of bats or reptiles on the site. There is therefore no impediment to granting planning permission for the development as recommended in your report. Finally, I can confirm that in the event that permission is granted for this application, my clients will withdraw the current appeal against the refusal of the 3-unit scheme. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and I can answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, Councillor Stringer, thank you.
Yes, I have 2 questions. The cross-section regarding Maple Cottage, it's actually unfortunate that the extension on Maple Cottage is not on our plans, on the aerial views. That's quite difficult. Page 55, for instance, the extension is not on there, which is quite unhelpful.
No, unfortunately, the way Ordnance Survey works is they don't tend to update things unless they're specifically required to for a particular reason. So any extensions, personal extensions that come later on included. On the PowerPoint, we have got the updated if need be.
Yeah, sorry. The cross-section shown, was that taken from the approved plans or measuring what was actually built? Because there is a discrepancy between the plans approved for the extension of Maple Cottage and what was built. What was built is actually smaller in height than the approved plans. The other question I've got is, I see nothing in here for air source heat pumps or anything like that. How are these buildings to be heated?
I don't have that information at the moment, I'm afraid, but that would be a matter for the building regulation stage. But, you know, happy to accept a condition if members have a preference on how that should be achieved.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, in how what should be achieved, sorry?
Are you asking about the heating of the house? Yeah,
yeah.
So
yeah.
You know, if members wish, then we will accept a condition to control that.
But we can't, because air source heat pumps need separate planning permission. So we cannot, it's a full application. It would have needed to have been in there already. And in fact, our validation plans ask whether you've taken that into account and ask why you've ruled it out, which you've just ticked to say you've ruled it out. So it is ruled out. We can't condition it in because it would need separate planning permission.
Well, that sort of answers your question then, Councillor Stringer, that at the moment it doesn't have it in, although the applicant had offered, and, you know, we can just sort of hear what you say. Thank you. Was the other question answered for you? I forget what it was.
Yes,
yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for the agent? I've got a couple. When we went on site, we were shown that you're now demonstrating a footpath for potential occupiers of said dwellings, coming past the, I suppose we'll call it stables that were of years ago. And the Parish Council pointed out that the doors open outwards. Had that been taken into account? And also, will this delineated area be able to take a pushchair? The width of it, you said it was 1 metre, it's not terribly wide, is it? Could you just amplify that, please?
Well, as was explained on the site visit, it's not a raised pavement, it's simply a change in surface material. So, you know, the width of it is not going to restrict if you want to go slightly off the footpath, for example. It is there for guidance and, you know, for the guidance of drivers as much as anything to keep that area clear. Yes, I mean, the doors of the shed do cross the footpath. They cross the existing pub access already, so there's no change there. Again, it is simply, you know, a device to enable pedestrians to know where to go and for drivers to avoid them.
Right, thank you. Now, also, obviously, members and objectors are all keen on the access side of things. And also, we went on a site visit, and I know there was a delay in getting the site visit forward, and everybody was anxious to get it forward, but you know the way we work now, we have to sort of then come back to a formal committee, whereas before, years ago, we'd still have a formal committee, but we'd have it on that day, so we didn't. But there was a length of time, and I just wonder why, unfortunately, the site wasn't pegged out a little better, and the fact that you didn't have a pole to assist with the height. And also, the area, I think it's slide 17, if you can put up, it does show the outside, why some effort hadn't been made to trim back the hedging to sort of demonstrate what you're trying to demonstrate to the committee. That's what we like to see, is what we see on site.
Yeah, my apologies if we hadn't prepared the site in a way that was required, but we didn't receive any requests, so I think we can only respond to requests. And, on previous site visits we've undertaken at councils, then, we have indicated heights of buildings with a cherry picker or a balloon in the air if it's, not a windy day. I think when this question was raised last week, we did point out that, if you wanted a reference point, there was a telegraph pole there and that was 10 metres high. So there was a sort of ready-made reference point if you needed it. We've now gone away and done a bit more work, and we've now pointed out to you that actually the 6 bells at the front provides the perfect reference point because it's exactly the same height as the houses we're proposing. So, those reference points are there for members to make that judgment. In terms of the access and the vegetation, well, it's a moot point whether you want the vegetation removed in order to see how good the visibility is, or you want the vegetation in place to see what the problem is now. So I think we took the view that, it was helpful to members to see there is a problem now, and we can actually resolve it through this application.
I think that was all I... Yes.
This one, right. Sorry. I'll move down, yes. Just a bit of, sorry. Items of furniture in the way, sorry. Just a very quick point following on from Councillor Stringer's question that I was aware, I must have been aware of this when it was introduced, and I'd forgotten, but Mr. Pearce has helpfully reminded me that air source heat pumps, the installation of them is now permitted development, as we've just checked online.
Ah,
so,
excellent.
That's just what we should remind the committee.
Oh, that's helpful. And also to the applicant who offered a condition with that. But that's the way planning goes, is it develops as it goes along. And that was a very useful point from everybody there. So, John? Yeah, hang on, Councillor String, we'll come to debate shortly.
If I can just add, I know there was a comment about Maple Cottage and its rear extension. I've just had a quick check of the approved plans, and there's nothing since. There is fenestration changes to the extension at the back in terms of what is on site and what was approved. Those fenestration changes arguably could be permitted development depending on when they were done. But ultimately, the height and the eaves height are thereabouts the same. There seems to be a slight difference in width, but of course without measuring it specifically, I wouldn't be able to say. But in terms of height and eaves, they seem to match up with the roof that is there. So from the
we're just using it as a reference point, so we shouldn't really be picking a planning application.
I think we need to be careful about that. Ultimately, discretion about the judgment of that building in contacts needs to be just judged on what we've seen on site as well.
So, as I say, page it out. Yes, I think they were the points I wanted to raise with yourself. So, we now have Councillor Otten, if you would, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, members, for visiting the site. So I hope you saw just what an impact this application will have. And despite highways views, the entrance onto Church Road is an accident waiting to happen. I'm pleased that you picked up the point about the extension in the neighbouring property not being on the plans. In my call-in, I have quoted policies HB1, HB13, HB2, design and residential amenity. This application now, I believe, has dwellings far in excess of the height of the neighbouring cottages and houses. The size and scale are completely out of proportion with the small flint and rendered cottages along the side of the site and the 6 bells itself, all of which are included in the conservation area. And current policy states should be sympathetic to local character and history. And Chairman, I'm very pleased that you raised the issue about the fact that there was no indication particularly of what the height of those new buildings would be. And I don't believe that the committee can be confident without full details of the survey and condition of the land, and without knowing what the depth and height of any foundations of those new dwellings will be. I would question why in previous applications, and I know you've mentioned this already, that the Heritage Officer stated that proposed works would have the potential to conflict with the pub, which is a Grade 2 listed building, as is the wall surrounding the car park. And you will have seen the damage to that listed wall, and therefore we are particularly concerned about what damage may continue to those listed buildings in this site. He also asked for advice, and the member from the Parish Council has also questioned the lack of advice from the economic development point of view, and yet we have had nothing, despite this council's commitment to supporting local businesses. LP29, any loss of services and facilities will be resisted. Following change of ownership of this pub, the pub now does have a new landlord stroke landlady who are desperate to make this an established and viable business. And I do believe that months and months of development, vehicles, noise will have a detrimental effect on that business. We've also talked about the height and mass, and as I've said, I do believe that the existing will be, I'm sorry, ignore that, I've already said that. And once again, as you have heard, the community and I continue to be at odds with the recommendations of highways. As you have seen, there appears to be no definitive line of what is and is not the highway boundary. And therefore, what is going to stop anybody exiting that site without having any instruction? Therefore, I still maintain that the entrance and exit onto this site is a potential accident waiting to happen. You've also mentioned, Chairman, the proposal for a so-called footpath alongside the outbuildings, and as you said, the doors to those, they are obviously part of the listed building, open outwards. And as you can see, if that happens, anybody with a pushchair, in a wheelchair, or a disability scooter would therefore then be forced to then step on to what will then be the access to and from the building site and the car park. Despite trying to prove, as I've said, there would be no risk to car users and pedestrians, I have been told that anybody, even on a horseback, needs to pull into Church Road in order to see round the bend at Upper Green. This is also being shown by users of mobility vehicles. It is impossible to negotiate. You've been told that there are no record of accidents, and I believe that is untrue. I have also quoted policy T10, history of flooding. The planning officer says there is no record of this, but I can assure him that this has been reported on numerous occasions, causing vehicles to pull onto the other side of the road, particularly when the water freezes. This is exactly why Councillor Passmore, who knows this area personally, proposed the site visit, as he is fully aware of that exactly happens. The successful community shop on Church Road has delivery vehicles, forcing those driving from Lower Green to pull out into the middle of the road, facing any from the opposite direction. And as you can see, this is an active, voluntary run community shop and is being well used by members of the community. You also will have the school bus parking along that road with a potential danger for children crossing over from Meadow Close. And there is no footpath on the side of the road from the pub. You have been shown and told of the drastic loss of the open community space. and this council has vowed to protect community open areas. Once again, there are still numerous conditions still to be agreed, including from the ecologist, and I have not seen that report, and therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I do still have those concerns, particularly on bats and the indication of the potential loss of trees and hedgerows. What conditions will be imposed on construction vehicles using such a limited site? I am concerned about the access for emergency vehicles and anybody and the refuse lorry. An archaeological investigation still needs to be done. So I make no apologies for once again calling in an application for this site. It is obvious from all of the number of others refused that this is totally unsuitable for any development, and it is clear that the developers are trying to computate to squeeze in some completely unsuitable permission onto what is a site that has far too many constraints. So I urge the committee to refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Otten. Before I forget, because my memory's not that good these days, if I can jump in with 2 questions, please. Where does the refuse lorry collect the refuse for the pub at the moment?
The refuse lorry, sorry.
You said that it would be a problem for a refuse lorry to collect refuse.
Well, at the moment, they can just pick them up while they park on the road.
So they do pick up refuse at the present?
Yeah, but they wouldn't surely,
thanks.
I can't
Okay.
believe that the people in those big houses are going to want to push
We're
their...
not debating, it's just an answer to the question.
Yeah, well, that's the question then, Chairman, that will the residents of those...
Well, no, you're not asking the questions, I'm asking you the question. We don't need to debate, Councillor Otten. I asked you a question where the refuse lorry collects at the moment, so it does, is the answer. Thank you. And then my other question to you, you mentioned about an open community space. Does the community pay for this space? Is it owned by the parish? Who owns this open space?
That is part of the land on the access of the site.
So it's owned by the current owners of, it's not an open community space, but it has been used as an open community. That's the difference. Thank you, Councillor Otten. Anyone else have any questions? Councillor Muller?
Councillor Otten, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned in your presentation that there has been an accident on that site. When was the actual accident and how serious was it? Because that seems to contradict with the information we have from highways.
Without having the statistics in front of me, I can't really answer that, but it is something that had, I mean, I don't say that they were critical accidents, but they are accidents that have been notified and known by the community.
And did these result in people being taken to hospital as a result of those accidents?
As I say, Chairman, I really don't have those details in front of me now.
Okay, thank you. If I have another second question, if I may, Chair. You mentioned also the delivery lorry to the community shop. How many times a week does that deliver to the shop, please?
I'm not a volunteer at the community shop. I'm a volunteer at Ralston Community Shop. But obviously, as and when they need it. But I would imagine they would certainly need to have one at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Otten.
Any further questions for Councillor Otten? No. Thank you very much. Very full debate to us. Well, not debate, laying out your concerns. Thank you. So, we now open up to debate. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to everybody for your presentations. That was really helpful, and the site visit was also very helpful as well. I must admit, we have to consider the application that is before us, and Highways have actually said in 22 years, as reported by the area planning manager, that they have got no reports of accidents, although I accept what Councillor Otten has said. I too had concerns about the entrance exit to that particular site. However, cars must have been going in and out of that site for 60, 70 years to the pub. And therefore, based on the information we have from Highways, I accept, yes, the visibility, if you're wanting to come out of that site, is restricted. But as far as we've been advised, there has been no serious accidents in that particular time. I accept the heritage issues, but again, I reiterate, we can only discuss what we have been told in this particular application. So I would like to sort of point out a couple of points I raised from the NPPF, the National Policy Planning Framework, paragraph 79, to promote sustainable development in rural areas, housing should be located where it will enhance or maintain the vitality of rural communities. In my opinion, I believe an extra couple of houses would obviously help support the local shop and the local community. And I also noticed there was a garage in the village as well as the shop and the pub. On paragraph 126 of the NPPF, achieving well-designed places, and I must admit the plans for the two houses, in my own personal opinion, I think they are of high quality. They're beautiful and sustainable buildings, and they look very similar to the front of the actual Six Bells pub. So at this moment in time, I'm sort of sitting on the fence a bit, and I'll be interested to hear what other members have to say before I decide whether to vote for or against this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Muller. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Stringer, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Still slightly mulling this around, but I think the highway thing is in a way a red herring, but also not, because it isn't, because the correspondence from the County Council, when pushed, and we realise that the County Council highways officers, it's a very high bar that they have to reach to the point they object. We realise they have to demonstrate severe harm, okay? But the point from where they're taking all of their measurements, the agreed point, is a point in that road that no sensible driver would believe was there. That's why I asked about the delineation. To actually get the safe, approaching the safe visibility display, you have to be so far out in what we've got a plan is the highway, that it would be unreasonable for a driver to assume that's where it was. I deliberately drove into that driveway, turned around and drove out again. I would not have thought that the edge of the highway was where the edge of the highway for our plans were. The response from the Highways Department is based on a road being 5.5 metres the entire width. A driver cannot measure that in their brain when they pull out of that driveway. When they pull out of that driveway, they assume the tarmac is where the highway is. So they assume they're already in the highway, and they should I stop here? Well, I can't see out because there's a wall in the way. So I creep out, and where am I? There's this. If there was a delineation, that would certainly help, but it's not there, and it's not part of this application. The other bit that I take from this, and I get the point about the high quality of the design using flint panels in the proposed houses, I get it looks very good. But all of our heritage advice over the years says, if you've got a heritage asset which is the pub, that you don't detract from it by copying it next door to it. You don't do that, because what you do is dilute that asset in terms of its visual appearance. The other bit, and I take the point that I believe these proposed dwellings are quite dominant with their height. They're certainly not subordinate to what's around them. And actually the siting of them is also something that I have a problem with. Plot 2, don't have a problem with. The siting of Plot 1 is actually very poorly sited for the residential amenity of those that are going to live in there. Anyone using the patio that comes off that dining room or living room is directly overlooked by the extension at Maple Cottage. And those windows in Maple Cottage are quite large, and they're very high in the air. So anyone using Maple Cottage are directly looking over the residential amenity of those people in Plot 1. That's poor design. So frankly, on balance at the moment, I wouldn't be supporting this, but I'm happy to hear other members in debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Catterton, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this application. There's certain aspects of it that I'm not particularly comfortable with. It's whether they're a good enough reason to refuse should it go to appeal. One of the parts of that is the people passing through a beer garden, dragging their bins from the house to the end of the road. is this suitable for every single type of resident that would live there? I'm not sure. The historic asset and the wall there, the vibrations of having lorries delivering materials and plant rumbling through on tracks really worries me, but in front of me it says that's not an issue. Unfortunately, that's something that I have to look at what's in front of me. But it really worries me that it's very close to the wall of the pub. It's very close to the actual historic wall, which is falling down in places. So vibrations, obviously without vibrations, as that wall's falling down. Very concerning. Councillor Stringer said about the overlooking from the extension. And yeah, I thought that extension does very much overlook the garden of, I think he said House 1. There would not be anywhere in that garden that you could get away so that someone couldn't see you from that window. The access is, I hope that there's a lot of debate on the access, because I don't know where I am on the access. Going to the site, it seemed like that access wasn't suitable. The measures in here will actually improve it, and you'll improve that access for a lot of other vehicles leaving the site. So I want us to talk about that a little bit more, and I think the loss of land. I think it's the use of that land, whether it's used by the pub or not, is only sort of bound by the pub's ambition to use that land. And once that land's gone, it can't possibly use it. Just because it was overgrown now, it does worry me that in mid-Suffolk, pubs are suffering. They're finding it hard, and pub owners are looking at ways to maximise those sites. But it does worry me about the heritage of the pubs and the economic damage to it. So I haven't got anything that I could definitely say, yes, this is a straightforward refusal. But I don't feel like it's the best application that I've seen. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those thoughts. Councillor Norris?
Thank you, Chair. I also have some problems with this application. The scale and mass of the two proposed dwellings appears to be out of keeping with the existing dwellings in the vicinity and the characteristics of Felsham in general. There has been mention in the papers of increased water runoff from the site, possibly making worse a flooding problem, which already exists in that area. And I still also have some issues with the access regarding visibility display and also possible effect on some of the heritage matters in that area. So all in all, at this stage, I do not feel that I'm able to support this application, but I will listen to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Gould, then Councillor Warboys. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I'm grateful to Councillor Custom for making a number of points of concerns about actually the impact of the construction might have on the pub and so on. I think those points are well made. I'm also very glad that we had the site visit because it certainly helped me to understand how this development would work and the crucial questions about access to the site. Councillor Stringer rightly reminds us about the very high bar that highways officers have to reach before there's substantive reason to object to it. Though I was looking at paragraph 4.5 on page 29, which starts by saying that the majority of third-party objections received are based on the highway on this highway matter. If this were a new access, it would be a clear reason for refusal. However, this is an existing one for commercial interest, and so on. So the argument for it is that it's already there, rather than if we were looking at it afresh, there would be substantive grounds for refusal. And I have to say, being on site, standing at the entrance to the pub, and for us to have to make frequent group movements off the highway back into the shelter of the pub car park because of the traffic coming round, particularly coming round the bend. And I was struck by two things there. One was the volume of traffic and speed it was going. And the other thing that struck me was actually how popular the shop is, which is great, and that was producing a lot of traffic, which also had an impact on I thought, on visibility and the overall feeling of safety of that area. So for me, this does really turn. I am uncomfortable about the highway's access to the site. And there are other matters. Councillor Muller rightly reminds us that we have to look at what is before us. So questions that crossed my mind on the site when we visited, such as, yes, but are these the houses that Felsham needs? Are in a sense irrelevant matters, I suppose, and we have to look at what we're looking at. But I am, for me, the absence of accidents isn't a very comfortable indicator of safety. Because I know in my own Warden division that people are very concerned about near misses, but they aren't necessarily recorded when advising on applications. So for me, that's the issue that this turns on more than anything else, is about the safety of the access. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Warboys, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I must follow on from Councillor Morris and Councillor Gold on points they've made. I think the first one, it's not just about the height of the buildings, it's about the mass or the bulk of the buildings in that particular setting, which I think is a sensitive setting from a heritage point of view. The 6 spells as a listed building, on the plan it looks quite a large, substantial building, but looking at it from the road, it actually looks more like 3 buildings put together. You've got a Georgian bit on the far right, which is next to the drive, and then earlier bits at the side, probably a modern extension on the end. And that's what makes it interesting. And then similarly, the cottages round about the road, they're not just simple blocks of buildings, but they're buildings that have had additions put to them. And this is like a similar proposal. This is quite intrusive, putting 2 substantial, massive buildings there. So I think the setting of the 6 spells is compromised, and I hesitate to disagree with the heritage officer, but I don't feel he could really say that there's no harm done to the setting of the 6 spells. A lot's been said about the access, and I'm grateful for the plans and the care that's gone into the presentation. I'm also very grateful to the site visit. Standing up at that access, it's about a risk assessment. Would I feel comfortable driving out of that access point every morning? No. Why? Buses pull upside the 6 spells. There's pedestrians walking down the road. It's not a very easy access. I agree it's being used for commercial access to the pub, but I think that's different to using it daily as a commuter. And for me there, I think there's a certain risk assessment that's prompts me to say that I don't think the access is suitable or safe. Finally, I think the loss of amenity. Rural villages aren't just about houses and shops and pubs, they're about spaces too. And this is a particularly attractive rural village. It has a substantial amount of space in the village itself. And the occasional access to the land that has been permitted in the past. You know, it's a good, safe space for community use. So I think there would be a loss of amenity there, just simply losing that empty, that open space, visually as well as from the point of view of people using it. So on the surface this looks a very straightforward application, but looking at it in more depth and in particular looking at the setting of it, I don't think I can really support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak before I have a speak? Yeah, Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this is a difficult application. There's lots of different factors here, and I'm grateful to other members of the committee for sort of highlighting different points. But I think Councillor Gould is correct, really, in sort of focusing in on the access issue as the sort of critical one. Now, I realise, having just had a very brief visit to the site, I didn't have the benefit of the sort of full site visit with help from officers explaining things there. But that issue seemed to me to stand out as you pull out of that car park and look to the right. It doesn't feel safe, and I was very grateful to John for his series of slides with the latest information of the highways ownership, and that sequence was very helpful. But to my mind, it really kind of crystallised my concerns about pulling out of that access onto the road, and it seems to me that we can only justify the kind of visibility display by kind of creating an artificial point, a third of the way across the highway. And even then, it doesn't quite meet the 43 metres that we should be having. So even kind of pushing it to the limits, it's not quite as it should be. So that kind of remains my primary concern. But I'm happy to listen to the debate and what others have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Well, obviously we're, all had a first go at this. A couple of points I'd like to make. I mean, I've been doing this for long enough, and I really think you need to focus, if you're all going to refuse it, on what can be defended. We've got to be mindful that there is already 3 at appeal, and I must admit, I'm always unhappy when there is an appeal in place and the applicants then put in an alternative suggestion to it, because it's forcing members to say, oh, well, that's much better. You know, we've got 2. The access, I'm afraid it is already an access, and what you're all saying is basically the pub should shut down because it's so dangerous. But clearly, when I hear Councillor Warboys, an interesting point, would I want to use that on a daily basis, and so on. But I do think there could be improvements there with the vegetation cutback. The public use of this land, I don't know who owns the land exactly. They can always withdraw that. That is not a right of the members of the community to use that land. And this land is clearly being put up at the moment for development. So the right of use is not public. It is granted, or has been in the past. But I accept, you know, the village has had some good events there. The overlooking aspect is actually of an already built dwelling overlooking someone else, not the other way round, which is often a point, because when I heard the word overlooking, I looked at the plans and there are no windows on either side that would overlook there. What else? Yeah, they are large buildings. They are too. I think there's been improvement to the previous application, and I know we're looking at this application, and I was at the one for 3, and I did look it back, sad as I am, and I recalled that one of our councillors here suggested that 2 dwellings would be better. So we've got 2 dwellings, so the agent has listened to that and put that forward. They are large. There are a few trees going to be taken out, but I think actually overall they will be shielded from the overall look from various aspects, although some people will overlook it. And I'm minded of a woolpit refusal that we refused on highways issues. And we fought that hammer and tongs, and we lost it. And it went to, I believe, the appeal inspector, and the appeal inspector overturned the committee. And that was a really serious narrowing of a road in the road. And those of you who know the Woolpit appeal, I mean, it was disappointing, but the committee, although they refused it, they lost out. So whilst I agree with the fact that there is a danger to the, or there would appear to be uncomfortable usage of the exit for new dwellings, it's already used. The heritage issue, we do have it on page 47. I consider the current proposal, because it's changed since it first came forward, and that's what happens in planning, things change and move along, would not result in any harm, and that is a heritage officer, and members are entitled to take their own opinion against a professional on that. So the way members are talking at the moment, they're going against all the professional advice, and that is what we have as a committee the ability to do. But I cannot find, in my mind, the objections that stack up. So we have been round once. I think we need to sort of move on. I think we all know what the issues are. And I'll leave it up to you. Councillor Muller, then Councillor Castor.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, I totally agree with what you say with this application, Chair, and it is a very, very difficult application, I think, to decide, which we've all sort of come to that conclusion. But I think you're absolutely right what you say, and although I do have serious concerns like my colleagues on this application, I do find it very difficult to come up with any substantive reasons to refuse it. And I've spent many hours going through this, trying to look at it, could we refuse it on highway grounds? I personally don't think we would win on that particular thing. Therefore, reluctantly, Chair, I am going to move that we approve, that we grant planning permission on this particular application. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Caston, do I have a seconder? Well, I'm quite happy to second it if nobody else will, because I cannot find the reasons. So on that basis, do you wish to speak to the motion, please? So Councillor Caston, you were going to speak.
I just wanted to go back to this bin situation, that the occupants of those houses are going to have to take their bins all the way round to the end of the road.
Can we just have that cleared? Is that the case? Do we know where the bins are on this particular application?
Yes, there's a bin collection point just as you're going in, just past the wall. It'll be on the left-hand side. Admittedly, on pictures as shown, bins of the pub are on the other side of the wall within the highway, are left there. So this would centralise the mall, I'm guessing, in terms of just behind the wall.
No, John, you can't guess.
I
Do
can't
we
guess.
know where the bin collection
well, in
is?
terms of the residential proposal, there is a bin store specifically. Can I show it on the plan? Would it be easier? Oh, I don't know if that helps. Oh, it might help. Have I got another closer one? Here we go. So your bin store is that element there, collection point there. So yes, they will need to bring their bins down this point here to this point. I will say, there is far longer distances in other schemes that have never caused an issue that we're aware of, but have been
Yeah, we don't need
objected
debate,
to.
we just need to know
Yeah.
the answer to the question. Thank you.
Well, and as you've been on site, many of you have, you know the distances involved there, but ultimately that would have to come through here and stop there.
Right, that answers Councillor Caston's question. You were carrying on, if you would, Councillor.
Yeah, I just it's actually quite a lot further than that. It looks in that picture. I just think that's okay. Yeah, you can choose to live in a house at the end of a drive, and you choose to live in those houses. But the demographic of the people in the villages, I take the bin out for my around 60-year-old neighbour because she can't move it. It just seems you know, an incredible distance to take a bin. But yeah, I do take your point. There are other sites that bins need to travel further. But yeah, no, I still don't know where I am on this. I find it really really close. This is a really. Would I want to defend this in appeal? I don't know. Maybe there's good enough reasons to defend this. I'm still not. I don't want to go to a vote yet because I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about this.
I think that's a very good worrying point you have there. But this is where it gets quite difficult, that there is already an appeal running and we don't know the answer to that. So I find that quite difficult. Councillor Stringer, then Councillor Gould, if I may, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This particular case is one of those ones for me that's not clear-cut either way. It's one of those ones where you've got an awful lot of shades of grey and an awful lot of, on the one hand this and on the other hand that, and it's a really knife-edge one. For me, but where we are in terms of the site location and what is around it, it actually sets us a bar to help us with that, because we have got a number of listed buildings around here that says that any development should maintain and enhance. Okay, we have that for our businesses as well. For me, it drops into three distinct areas. One is that highway. I don't think we can duck the highway issue. The fact that people haven't used it in objecting in the past, etc., or used reasons for refusal, this is actually quite an area that's moved a lot. Highways have said there's no history of serious accident. But I can see pictures of this pub not 2 or 3 years ago, where the front end of the pub is completely shingled and there's tables and chairs and umbrellas out the front. That's in technically what we're now being told is the highway. Well, hang on a minute. You look at pencil drawings from the 1890s, the front of it looks like a village green. I mean, this doesn't look like highway. So no doubt there wouldn't have been injury accidents with cars if it was people sitting out there having a pint and a meal. So this has moved somewhat. But I still think we're being able to rely on a plan in terms of the highways that isn't there in reality. We've been asked to start from a place that frankly is not delineated and not there, and therefore not reasonable for us to use. The reasonable position to use about the sightline is where you would assume it is, because there's no delineation, where you'd assume it is does not give you safe visibility. That bit being put to bed, we look at the design of what we have, the orientation of the design of what we have, serious reservations about that plot one. They have basically very little.
Councillor, can I ask you not to keep going over the points that you've already made earlier? Can we be
brief?
brief?
I'm suggesting what I'm highlighting are 3 areas that could be used as a reason for refusal that would bear weight. That's what I'm trying to rely on. Okay? No. That's why I'm arguing against those that are suggesting that we should approve, because there are 3 distinct areas that I don't agree with. I don't agree that plot 1 is well designed. Its orientation will mean that the private area, an amenity there, is seriously impeded by the overlooking from Maple Cottage. The other more area that I have problems with is the bulk and the mass of what we're being agreed to today. They are very large buildings, but we are being told that they're no higher than the original pub. well, there's one element of the pub roof that's at this height, but it actually comes to a point. It's not a width of roof that's at that height. It reads as a pinnacle, not as a linear form. And what we've been asked to agree here is a big linear form twice of that height. So I believe that these two buildings with their bulk and mass do not respect that listed building and are not in keeping with their surroundings. So on 3 distinct points, I believe I cannot support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just take one more comment and then we must go to the vote because we are now repeating ourselves on many of the issues. Councillor Gould?
On that basis, Chair, I withdraw my request to speak.
Yes, Chair, I'll start the vote now. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of the agenda. That will bring up the subsection on voting and attendance. On that, you will then see the vote highlighted in blue. The vote that is in progress is that application DC 21-02924 be approved as detailed in the officer recommendation. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and that is 2 votes for and 6 against, so the motion is lost.
Stage of the debate, or does anybody want to move on? We've lost the vote, so we need an alternative suggestion. The motion is lost. Councillor Stringer?
Yeah, 2 options left to us now. We either can agree to defer the application, or we can have a substantive motion to refuse the application as it stands. I would therefore suggest that we move that we refuse the application on 3 distinct policy points.
Can I just ask you on what basis you might offer to defer the application? Bearing in mind there is an appeal running at the moment, was that at the back of your mind?
No, I was just outlining the options we could have, and if someone wanted to move a deferral, they're perfectly at liberty to do that if they wished. I'm moving a refusal, yes, Chair. Thank you. On the 3 points I made earlier. First, of the design of the dwellings, their mass and scale is not in keeping with other buildings in the area, including the public house, and they detract from the public house and its setting.
Can you just slow down?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Right. That's one. The second one is the orientation and location of one of the plots. It will lead to poor residential amenity for the new owner due to overlooking from Maple Cottage. And also, I do think we need to mention the concern. Now we've visited and we've had all of the information on highways, that there is an ambiguity there, that it has not been set out where the edge of that highway is, that it can achieve the visibility required. Because it's not delineated. You can't find it. No reasonable person would do that.
I think John will have a comment on that.
Yeah, fine. No. Well,
yes, so your reason needs to be precise and accurate, but ultimately I get what you're saying. I'm not sympathetic to the situation here at all. Ultimately, the recommendation, sorry, I keep saying ultimately, the recommendation from your Highways Authority is that they support the proposal, but they are also saying that the visibility display, regardless of where you take it, is going to be short to, to the standards that they've got. So even if we took the furthest point that they say is allowable in their opinion, and it is a judgment, in their opinion, it is still short by 3 metres in one direction. Is it that is the issue?
Fails to achieve.
So it fails to achieve the standards set out by the Highways Authority. So regardless of the fact they've supported it or not, it's the failure that, regardless of where you take the point, it still fails to actually achieve the standard visibility display. I just want to be very clear on that point, because I'm thinking of how the council may defend that later.
I think that's very helpful. Thank you, John. That helps crystallise it. That's it, Chair.
Chair, if I read it out again, just so that everyone, so that also Mr. Patemangee or any other of my legal colleagues need to make any points regarding it. So I have it down that the design of the dwellings, the mass and the scale is not in keeping with the buildings in the area and retracts from the public house and setting. That the orientation and location of plot 1, I believe, is that correct? Plot of 1 will lead to poor residential amenity due to the overlooking from Maple Cottage, and the highways ground was fails to achieve the visibility displays as required by the local highways authority. Is that acceptable to the proposer and seconder, and also my?
I remember if we take, sorry.
Scale and mass.
I've got.
Design of the dwellings, which was mass and scale, was not in keeping with buildings.
Yes, are members happy that we write them up and expand upon those points, or because ultimately you obviously want some policy context within those and words? So are you, because otherwise we need 5 minutes for me to write that out in full.
To get that clear now, I don't think we need to give that as a tacit agreement for you to go away. I think we need to get that clear now.
Right. Can
we suspend the meeting?
Could you give me 5 minutes to write that up into something that members might wish to approve?
I think, I'm sorry, we need it clear now. Okay. Thank you very much for that. The planning officer has now come up with a book of words, so if John reads it out, and then we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Forgive me, I've not read this out properly for the first time, so hopefully this makes sense. Get my teeth in. So the first point is the point around the access. So I'm suggesting members consider the proposed development would use an existing access that is not in accord with current standards for highway access and would lead to further intensification of the access, increasing the risk of accidents occurring. Sufficient improvement of the access is not possible due to inadequate provision. Sorry, let me rewrite that slightly. Sorry, there you go. So, sufficient improvement of the access is not possible to adequately outweigh this risk given the restrictions of the listed wall, and so cannot be conditioned. This was therefore contrary to policies T10, H3 and NPPF paragraph 111. Second reason would be the proposed development for two houses would, if approved, result in development out of keeping and contrary to the character of the surrounding existing properties and conservation area by reasons of mass, scale and appearance, and further distracts from the setting of the listed public house. The proposal is not considered to enhance, preserve or add to the significance of the area. On this basis, the proposal is considered contrary to GP1, HB8, H3 of your local plan, CS5 of your core strategy, and NPPF, including sections 12 design and 16 conservation and enhancing the historic environment. And the last reason, the proposed development by reasons of orientation and siting of plot 1 would, if approved, result in poor amenity being enjoyed by the occupiers of that plot due to overlooking from the existing dwelling Maple Cottage. This is poor design and fails to meet the NPPF, including sections 12 design and paragraph 130F. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to check, the proposer and seconder are happy with that? Thank you. So the vote is now in progress, members. So the vote reads that application DC 2102-924 be refused for the reasons as read out by the area planning manager just now. If members go to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of today's agenda, the voting will be shown on the subsection of voting and attendance and in the light blue colour. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and that is 6 votes for and 2 against, so the motion is carried.
Thank you very much, everybody. So we move on to DC 21-026-17, land to the south side of Framingham. And I'll ask Vincent Pearce to introduce the application, if you would please. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, guests. As the Chair says, we're looking at a reserved matters application for 49 dwellings in the village of Laxfield. Outline planning permission was granted December last year for up to 49 dwellings. At that time, the access to the site was determined. So today we're asking you to look at appearance, scale, layout, and landscaping matters. In terms of the conditions that were attached at outline stage, the one we're looking at today is condition 2, the reserved matters details. There may be things that come up during discussion that we can deal with under some of the other conditions that don't form part of this reserved matters application. Laxfield in the northeast corner of the district, and my presentation is merely to supplement the content of the report. So there we are, Laxfield, on the edge of the district, close to East Suffolk, with Fressingfield, Stradbroke and Whirlingworth straddling it to the west. Laxfield does have a neighbourhood plan that is approaching referendum stage. I don't think a date has yet been announced. Correct me if I am wrong. The report refers to a number of policies within the neighbourhood plan that are relevant, but because we're looking at reserved matters this morning, I will pick out the elements of that plan that deals specifically with matters that are relative to reserved matters rather than principle. Top of my list of things that we'll be looking at is LAX 6, housing mix, and you'll notice there that in the neighbourhood plan there's an emphasis on providing a balanced mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom units, and also LAX 7, that all dwellings should meet NDSS standards, nationally described space standards. We will touch on LAX 10, the dark skies policy in the neighbourhood plan, although strictly speaking that will be dealt with outside of this under a separate condition. Just to familiarise ourselves, Laxfield on the top right-hand corner in a largely dark part of the district. You can see Framingham in East Suffolk glowing and Eye to the northwest, obviously more urban centres, so naturally attract a lot more illumination. We also need to look at LAX 11, which sets out the neighbourhood plan design proposals, or policies rather, with all the criteria. We'll look at those as we go through the presentation. So here we have the application site in the cross hatch on the southwest side of the village with the benefit of outline planning permission. The red line, which does match the outline permission. The site displays and access, as I previously said, were agreed at outline stage, so they're not before you this morning, but I have included a slide just so that you can be assured that adequate visibility is being provided. The site is on the left middle of the site. We'll have a quick fly over Laxfield. So the site is coming into view, the L shape. Framingham Road is wrapping round it in that S shape. Just to the top left of the corner, you see the primary school, which is now swinging round towards the bottom of the photograph. And as we pull out, you can see the extent of neighbouring residential development. The site you see there at the bottom is where the car park will be provided for the school. So that will go to Suffolk County Council in the first instance, and that was secured under a Section 106 agreement that was included with the outline planning application. I need to draw your attention to condition 2 that says the reserved matters detail shall be generally in accordance with the illustrative layout that was agreed at the outline stage. So to some degree, members liked what they saw previously, and that was used as the benchmark for the reserved matters. So that is the layout that was approved at outline stage. So the open space is to the bottom of that plan, off of the image, and it is a series of perimeter blocks of housing. In terms of constraints, we need to note the listed building just to the north and the fact that footpath 29 touches the site to the west on the corner, on that bend of Framingham Road. So that's the outline layout. I've drawn around the edge of it in red, so you can see the limit of the built development or the developable area. If we superimpose the current proposal, you can see it fits inside that line. Generally speaking, there's a little bit more open space to the south, and one of the access roads, estate roads, just nibbles a bit into the top of the layout. So let's look at the car park element first. So that's 18 spaces. You access it from Framingham Road, so you come in, you swing round, you're in the car park. We are told that is probably going to be used for staff parking, which will free up an existing parking area within the school. So as well as the car park area, we get an extended area of footway, some crossing points, so that pedestrians can come out of the estate or from the car park, walk along the new piece of footway and cross into the school. We already have outside of the school a 40-metre long lay-by, which is capable of accommodating approximately seven cars. So that's the lay-by shown in the dotted line outside the school. We have an area of parking within the school with its own access. That's the view into that parking area at the school. If we take a quick journey westwards along Framingham Road to the school, you'll notice there is already footways on both sides of the road. That continues right the way up to the school entrance. So what will happen is the extended footway will allow for a new crossing point right outside of the school. That is an uncontrolled crossing, so there are no signals or what used to be called Belisha beacons. But they weren't required at the time of the outline, and they have not been required by the Highway Authority this time round in terms of that crossing point. In terms of the Framingham Road frontage, you see Chestnut Tree Farm at the top, which is the listed building. You see this deep area of landscaping. Our own heritage team are now satisfied that that provides adequate buffering so that the impact on Chestnut Tree Farm is not harmful. There is a path that runs through it, and as you can see, that connects the entrance to the estate with the start of what is footpath 29 that runs off to the west from that bend. View of the frontage. That is Chestnut Tree Farmhouse sitting behind its own dense planting along the road frontage. There is a connection included, and this was required at outline stage, from the development into Mill Close that gives you access to Mill Road to the east. All of those dwellings are sufficiently far enough away from adjoining properties not to pose any residential amenity issues, and I will come back to that insofar as in your report you'll notice that we have suggested that plots 6, 7, 8 and 9, which are here, down this side, shouldn't have any windows at first floor. That is a typo. What we are suggesting is there shouldn't be any new windows installed within the roof rather than in the first floor, because there are bedrooms at first floor, but there's sufficient distance to avoid any contradiction with your policies on space standards and layout. Those are the properties on that eastern edge. That's the rear views. And that's the property, plot 1, which looks to the north They are not habitable room windows, so we don't think there's an issue there, but we would want to stop other windows being inserted into that end elevation at first floor. We get some nice little bit of detailing in diaper brickwork in places. It's just flashed on the screen. That's the view from Mill Close, which is to the east, looking back into the development site where there will be a new pedestrian footpath connection. At the southern end of the site, you'll notice that all the properties are looking out onto that open space. That space is well surveilled. It is also an area with the attenuation pond. We have a good distribution of affordable housing at 35%. That does come to 17 units. Each of those is below the 15 cluster that we think is usually the maximum necessary to avoid consolidation of affordable housing. So we have got pepper potting on this development. In terms of the mix, we do have a good mix that accords with, I would suggest, the neighbourhood plan. We have 10 bungalows, which is a high number in a scheme of 49 dwellings. So I think members will be pleased to see a good proportion of those units will be bungalows, and a mix of sizes too, in terms of 1 bed, 2 bed. That's for the affordable, and for the open market, we even have a 4-bed bungalow. So there's a really strong mix. There's nothing above 2-storey within the development, so we're not looking at 3-storey or rooms in the roof. I've emphasised LAX 6 in the neighbourhood plan that says we should be looking to provide a balanced mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom units, which is what this scheme does. All the properties will meet NDSS. So despite what it may say in the report, we've double-checked and we've looked at all the updated drawings, and I can now assure you that we have full compliance with NDSS. Good mix and distribution of the bungalows. The green are open market bungalows, the red are the affordable bungalows. A good mix of styles and design. Some nice detailing, coins, a simple porch, dental cornice under the eaves, flat brick arches. You've got sash windows on this version. You have a plinth, segmental arch, simple door hoods. Again, nice detailing, simple, but we would say of a high quality. Stone sills, window reveals, a rather nice large chimney stack. And when you have a corner turning unit, we even have some nice detail looking out onto the street. So we've got the sort of Pentis board there in the gable, a fine chimney. Again, nice detailing. Now, the question is, can you tell the difference between the affordable and the open market units? I think in a comment I read from the Parish Council, there was a suggestion that you could easily tell the difference. I would argue perhaps you can't, because the ones on the right are the affordable, the ones on the left are open market, and there is a close similarity between house types across this development when you're looking at the same sized units. The good news here is that because gas is unavailable, the developer Hopkins Homes will be providing the houses with air source heat pumps from the start. So we're not looking at retrofitting of hydrogen converters or anything else. We are looking at air source heat pumps from day one. All the affordable housing will meet building regs part 4M2, accessible and adaptable dwellings, which is another good step forward. Bit of a spelling mistake there. We have ecological enhancement Storage units for properties where there isn't a garage. We will be expecting full electric vehicle charging provision, and water butts are being provided. We have now got a landscape and ecology management plan that we are satisfied with, so we'll be recommending that we ensure by condition that everything in that is implemented as described. In terms of materials, what's being proposed here, the bricks, a fine mix of what you might call locally traditional vernacular colours and textures. I have a little concern about the proposed roof tiles because they are, in terms of the Fenland pan tile, the red and the black, they are concrete tiles, and members are increasingly expecting us to secure an element of clay for the obvious reason that it is better suited to historic settlements. I would expect us to, if members are minded to grant permission, to add a condition that says further details of the roofing material will be required in order that we can ensure that the buildings in the most prominent positions have clay pan-tile roofs. Laxfield is a very beautiful village. The heart of it, the historic heart of it, is what you would picture as a typically delightful Suffolk village, and we do believe that clay tiles are part of the prescription for ensuring that new development begins to harmonise with existing older development. So, in terms of the character, obviously the heart of Laxfield has that old Suffolk village character, but on the edges, opposite, here you can see the character of Home Meadow, which is a modern new estate. And on Framingham Road, typical 60s, 70s style estate development. So in strict terms, there is very little historic character within this part of the village. We are suggesting that the house types and the materials are such within this proposal that it probably would represent an enhancement of character in some ways, but it wouldn't reflect the historic core. We have brick boundaries in the locations shown. I have a little concern that in these positions we're not having brick. They're expressed as boarded fencing. I think we should ensure that they match the same quality as the rest of the estate. So I would be suggesting an additional condition so that we can ensure that those boundaries, as shown in blue, are the same quality as the boundaries in yellow, which are brick walls. I noticed the parish had some concerns about connectivity. So the yellow triangle on the left is the connection to the existing footpath 29, which you can see on the left of that slide. The yellow triangle to the top is the crossing to the school, and the triangle on the right is the link through to Mill Close. So I'd argue that this development is actually well connected to those parts of the village that you might want to access. We have our colleagues at Suffolk Floods and Water recommending approval of the details. They've looked at all the updated drainage details, and whilst they are the subject of separate conditions, I just want to quickly run through how the drainage will work to give you the satisfaction that this isn't a problem that will crop up after reserved matters have been approved, if indeed that is the decision of the committee. So looking at SUDS, I'll just darken that a minute. We actually have an estate here where we do have swales throughout most of the estate. Now you'll be familiar with the fact that we can now usually secure the attenuation basin, which you see at the bottom looking a little bit like a fish, but we have a struggle to get developers to incorporate swales. And that is very topical at the moment. The government is spending a lot of time thinking about how we deal with water, and advocating swales is high on the agenda again, and we actually have a scheme here where all of those swales connect to that attenuation basin. So we are getting much closer to a full SUD scheme rather than the hybrid where we have lots of pipes, but they all end up in the basin. So we're actually keeping a lot more of the rainwater on the site. In terms of foul, what will happen is all of the foul will drain to the south of the site, and the red dot is the pumping station that will push it all back up onto the existing system in Framingham Road. So the authorities are happy with that system. In terms of the surface water, all the surface water drains into the attenuation pond, and then it is released at greenfield rates into adjacent watercourses. Parking, the applicant has worked with us to ensure that we don't have the dreaded triplex parking. So I've set out there the range of options that we have. We have a garage with 2 side-by-side spaces. We have tandem parking. We have visitor parking in bays on the estate roads. So we don't have triplex parking on this development. I've taken a very small corner of the landscaping proposals. This is on the Framingham Road frontage with Chestnut Tree House, the listed building opposite, and you can see a rich mixture of tree species, all designed to encourage wildlife, under which there is both grass planting, meadow planting, and that goes all the way around the development. But rather than take up lots of time showing you the entire estate, I've taken this as perhaps the most prominent part of the development. So we're very pleased with the landscaping scheme. In terms of the meadow areas, a very rich mixture, principally tussocky grass, but with a rich number of wildflowers growing through. Again, that is something that will encourage wildlife throughout the whole year. So our recommendation is to approve the reserved matters that I've quickly run through, but in terms of conditions, as I say, we are suggesting that we would want to look again at the complete suite of materials to ensure that we get some clay, traditional clay elements in there. I am suggesting to you that we take one more look at some of those boundary details to ensure that they're all of the same high quality. I've asked that we delete the reference to no first floor windows in plots 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, but we do say no additional rooms in the attic. We will require implementation of the landscape and ecology strategy as set out in the management plan. We will, I suggest, ask for an additional element to the construction management plan to ensure that we understand whether or not piling is necessary, and if so, how that will be managed, and such conditions as may be required by highways and archaeology. But in terms of the broad detail you have before you, we are very satisfied that it achieves a high quality. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, do you have any questions for Vincent at all? Councillor Stringer, thank you.
Just one. How many of the chimneys in the plans are real and how many are fake?
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. My understanding, and it's a question that we can ask our guest from the applicants, some of those will be real chimneys. But I can't give you the exact breakdown, but perhaps you will ask our guest.
Any further question, Councillor Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a very minor question on the landscaping. I saw mention of a variety called, or a tree called the Calorie Pear there, which I was intrigued by and looked it up very quickly. And it's described as a native of China and Vietnam, and increasingly regarded as an invasive species. So I'm not quite sure how that fits with the sort of planting native sort of trees.
We could easily substitute that for a native wild pear, if that would...
We can ask the applicant on that one, and I'm sure we're not going to hang our hat or pear on that one. But thank you for the observation, because I wanted to know what a tulip tree was, but I didn't want to show my ignorance. Councillor Gould.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask about provision for visitor parking, please.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. If we can go to slide 18, please. Oh, I could do that, I suppose, quick. Can you do it quicker, Mandy, or can I? Okay. So, we have high numbers of off-street spaces above the minimum, but we have in here, so visitor parking, these points are all just crossings over the ditch. In here, there's some visitor parking in here. I'm just quickly scanning my eye, and some here, 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 and here. So in a way, you could see that what's happened is we've tried to align the visitor parking closest to the open space so that if you wanted to access that, you could park here and get into the open space, perhaps if you were coming from outside of the estate. So it looks to me like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 spaces.
So these are off-street spaces?
Effectively, well, they're on street. They are on street.
And the width of the road at that point?
At that point it will be 4.8, but it is in the form of a lay-by. So the parking spaces, sorry, it would help if I could blow that up. I wonder if we've got one.
I understand.
Okay.
You've answered that. I didn't phrase my questions, but it might have been phrased, didn't it?
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Norris?
Thank you. Page 69, Parish Council comments. It seems they have a number of concerns about speeding in the area. In the first batch of comments, second line up from the bottom, at the top of the page there, 30-mile-per-hour area should be extended past the site. And in the further comments, in the middle of the page, is the last comment, request an extension to the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit to the west of the site. Could the officer clarify exactly what the speed limits are and where the 30-mile-per-hour finishes at present? Presumably it's a national speed limit, otherwise. Thank you.
I couldn't tell you exactly without looking in more detail where the limit starts, but I do know as I took you through the slides along Framingham Road, there was a sign on the left that said 20 miles an hour, school area. The County Council have not felt it appropriate to extend the 30-mile-an-hour limit. That would be a matter that sits outside of the reserved matters. It wasn't approved as necessary by them at outline stage, but it could be a matter that could be taken up with the County Council through the Highway Service at any point in the future. But it isn't a matter that's before us this morning, although I do accept that the Parish Council have their concerns, and I imagine, well, I don't imagine, I know that they're thinking about school children going to and fro the school. Will excess speeds cause a hazard? The County Council is satisfied that even with the creation of that new car park, the crossing point there does not represent undue hazard, highway hazard.
So just to add to that, the 30-mile-an-hour sign is on the corner of the road, as if you want to just bring that plan up just so we can pinpoint it. So where your yellow triangle is on the far left there, essentially just before that is so just come down a tiny bit, but effectively, yeah, roughly there, is a 30-mile-an-hour point sign. As you come around that bend into towards the village, if you carry on a bit, Vincent, stop there, come back a bit, essentially there is a sign that says school safety zone 20 is plenty. That's where that sign starts at that point.
And there's an equivalent one as we saw on this side.
Yeah.
Thank you. Without any further questions? No. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Julie, are you now going to read the Parish Council? Unfortunately, the lady had to leave. She did stay as long as she could. Julie has a statement from the Parish Council. Is that right?
Yes,
thank you, Councillor.
So, statement from the Parish Council. First of all, I would like to make it clear that although we objected very strongly to the original application and to the principle of the development on this site, we do accept that outline consent has been granted and that the development of this scale will happen on this site. Our intention now is not to try and stop the development, but to obtain the best possible outcomes as a result of it for both current and future residents of the parish. Our earlier comments are included in the committee papers prepared for you, but there are several points I would like to bring to your attention. There are a number of things we would like to achieve as a result of this development. Firstly, we would like to retain the benefit of the community of the drop-off spaces that featured in the original layout that the committee members commented so favourably on during the original planning committee meeting. We agree that it was attractive, but it was also an important improvement for us given the current situation regarding the drop-off arrangements at the school, which will only be made worse by the new development. Following on from this, we believe that some kind of formal visible crossing is necessary, ideally, of course, a controlled crossing. We accept that the level of risk may not be as high as it is in an urban environment with and from the anticipated extension of the school, much greater traffic volumes. But the increase in traffic, which, I've done that bit, sorry, still represents an increased level of risk for our community that we will believe needs to be managed. Sorry, she scribbled over this as well. We would formally request the planning committee members are invited to attend a site meeting so they can experience the current situation for themselves and understand why we are concerned. Sue was also knocked off her bike outside the school. Finally, we would like to be able to take on responsibility for the management of the public open space, again, for the benefit of the whole community. Examples of projects we are already developing include the establishment of community woodland in the parish and development of a forest school aimed at preschool and primary aged children. This site might offer potential for this kind of scheme, but we would of course be happy to agree appropriate management with Mid-Suffolk District Council. Then there's a little bit from a resident who was going to sit as well, but they've become ill. There's only a small paragraph. Can I read that, Chair? There was 3 minutes supposed to be for the... Yeah? Oh, sorry. Okay. We believe that the principles of the original layout presented in the application for outline planning consent should be maintained in the final project. Specifically, we strongly request that the drop-off spaces shown in the original layout and which councillors thought was a key feature and benefit for the parish should be retained. We are concerned that details of the proposed...
I think you've gone over the time now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there was 3 minutes for the objector put on there.
Is that an objector?
Yeah, well, it was a representation from the school, actually.
Well, yeah.
So, yeah, Sue Innes did speak to me just before the meeting, but the council's governance arrangements in terms of speaking are in terms that a ward member can, because they have unlimited time, include whatever they want in their statement, and as such they can include the parish. When it comes to objectors and other speakers, the whole point of public speaking is speaking in person, which is a point that we have always been predicated upon, because it's also based upon the point of answering questions as well. It's about that accountability of answering questions. So in terms of the parish response, they've already commented, and as Councillor Flatman has read out, that is usually acceptable because it is another authority. We wouldn't usually allow objectors' comments to be read out by another unless the ward member so wished to include that as part of their representation. and that there's something that they believe as they put forward. If you wish to, Councillor, that's your... You can, Councillor. It's your discretion, Councillor, what you want to include within your representation to the committee.
Now, applicant, Mr. Smith, I believe you're going to give 3 minutes to us as well, please.
Thank you, Chairman, members. My name's Chris Smith. I'm Development Planner for Hopkins and Moore. Following the previous grant of outline planning permission on the site, we have developed and refined the detailed proposals now before you in consultation with your officers to produce a development which we feel will be very much in keeping with the character and appearance of the rural village of Laxfield. As you will note from the committee report, both your officers and all statutory consultees are now fully content that we have suitably addressed all the required technical and environmental aspects. We're confident the proposals will provide an attractive new development in a sustainable location on the edge of Laxfield, delivering 17 much-needed new affordable homes, together with all the requested financial contributions towards other essential infrastructure via the SIL and Section 106 procedures. In summary, I hope that you can concur with your officer's recommendation and that you are able to support the approval of these reserved matters. I'll just pick up quickly, if you'd like me to, on the points that have been made so far. In terms of the chimney issue, all the dwellings where the chimneys are on the side are proper, real working chimneys. The ones where they're on the centre of a dwelling or the repair or a terrace are decorative ones which aren't working. In terms of the car parking that I think has been raised originally on the indicative plan for the outline, as well as the car park that is required to be proposed via the Section 106, there was also an indicative additional parking area supposedly for people to drop off from the school. As you've heard, given the level of car parking that there is on the site and also the number of visitor spaces that are provided on the site in consultation with both the Highway Authority and your officers, it was determined that that additional car parking would be unnecessary and probably counterproductive in terms of encouraging sustainable parent travel to and from the village school. I think they were the main issues that are raised. So otherwise, I'm happy to answer any other questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was well within the 3 minutes. Do you want to raise your question, Councillor Mellon, regarding your pear tree at all? And any other people want to raise questions?
Yeah, just looking at the landscaping proposal, there's a couple of species there which appeared not to be native ones. The Calorie Pear, was it? And the tulip tree, which I've looked up and is apparently a magnolia type. So I wasn't sure whether those were appropriate to that sort of location or not.
We're perfectly happy to amend those particular species if they are. I'm not a landscaping expert, but yes, we normally propose a deciduous mix appropriate to the location, and if it was felt that those two species weren't appropriate, we could happily change those for alternative ones.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And now we come on to the ward member, Councillor Flatman, if you would, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Laxfield is a very proactive and inclusive community, and we want to secure the very best outcomes for development for all our residents and generations to come. Therefore, I would ask the committee to take the Parish Council's points one at a time and think, would we want this addressed if this was a development in our village? Would these warrant conditions? Would they enhance the lives of our residents? Can the developer work with the parish to secure a really
low carbon, inclusive, beautiful and safe site where people will want to live and be proud to call their homes. We would also request clarification about the electric vehicle charging points that are intended to be located in the school car park, specifically regarding their maintenance and associated costs. Will the school be expected to be responsible for this? And that was already in that one, a site visit. So that's the other thing I wanted to agree with was with the officer about the tiles. I think concrete tiles are totally unacceptable in a village with all the historic buildings that we do have. And I'd just like to ask again about the drop-off space. That was one of the conditions that was put forward and members went for very significantly with last time, thinking that this is a very busy school. We take students from many villages around, and with the extra capacity we're going to have, with extra classrooms, etc., we are going to have, it's a very good school, so you can imagine there's a lot of people coming to that village. And they park double along that road, so you've got where that lay-by is, you've got one line, and then they'll come in and they'll double park. Then you've got the school bus coming there to let the high school kids on and the little ones off, and it's absolute mayhem. So, you know, those parking places in that development were one of the key decisions around when the committee sat last time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I sort of have a question, but not quite sure if you're going to be able to answer this. Do you think that some of the parking expertise of those dropping off their children may be questionable in a highways issue?
Traffic at that time in the morning, and again with the zebra crossing or whatever crossing we have there, it does need to be it needs to be clear. It's not going to be clear. It's just like a little bit of concrete in the road. I think could be a different colour. I don't know, but it just needs to be quite clear there.
Yeah.
And,
no, we don't need a debate on it. I just wanted to know if
Sorry.
the people who are parking may not be adhering to the highway code.
Yeah, and the 20-mile limit, where John said it was, I think, was it who said about the 20-mile? The 20-mile limit is near enough just at the end of the listed building. It's not. That's why they wanted it.
You're entering the debate, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
I just wanted to know the answer. John, did you want to say something on some concrete tiles or something?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points there. Obviously, this is a Reserved Matters application, not the outline, which dealt with a number of issues. And one of the issues it dealt with in the 106 agreement was the provision of the school car park. So the school car park is secured by the Section 106 agreement, part of the outline, and it comes with a kind of schedule of what shall happen. Ultimately, it's secured to be supplied, if you like, prior to the first market house being occupied. It does say here that it will be a matter of it's going to be transferred to the county council or the school or another body. So there's a sequence. Effectively, if the county doesn't want it, the school has an option. If the school doesn't want it, someone else can. There is 2 electric parking charging points. Doesn't say how they are to be maintained, but the specification of the whole thing needs to be agreed with the county in any event to start with. So I assume that would be embodied with regard to that. Just turning though my attention to the other points raised, the drop-off arrangement was not secured. So parking for 17 was secured, although I note it's now 18 on the Reserved Matters. They've increased it by 1 space. But the drop-off area was not part of the was not secured as part of the outline, was not secured as part of the 106 agreement, and we can't go back on that now. And ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vincent, I have nothing on a crossing either that was secured as part of the outline. No, thank you. The management of the open space, which was another point raised, says that the management of the open space should be transferred to a management company. There is no reason why that management company couldn't be the parish council, but that is a choice between the operator, the landowner, operator, whoever, and at that point in time that would be a private arrangement. Does that help?
Vince, can you put up the picture that shows the pull-in that there is available at the moment? Do you remember we looked at the briefing and there was something there so that everybody can sort of see what's available?
The drop-off area that is
there was a picture, wasn't there?
There is. I'll go back.
A photo.
But I just want to clarify.
Okay.
This is the area that was secured under the Section 106. This is the area that is being referred to as a drop-off area within the outline. So you'll notice that in terms of improving protection for the listed building, by increasing the buffer area in here, it does mean the loss of those spaces. But the drawing you're referring to, Chair, is... Yes. Yeah. Just got to get to the right point there. And we also, so that's the space, but we also have a parking area inside the school that I believe is currently used by staff. However, if the space on the opposite side of the road, the new space, is to be used by staff, potentially that frees up the area inside the school. And it seems to me this might be more of a management issue between the school and the county as to who gets to use which parking areas. Because you could imagine that the area to the south of Framingham Road, the new one, could be used by parents as a drop-off. But in terms of the planning system, we have secured what was required and outlined through the 106. I think there's now an issue that sits outside of planning between what the parish want to see, parents want to see, the school want to see, and Suffolk County Council. And that's a matter for others, some inside this room and others outside of the room.
Can you just put that picture, the picture where the yellow is, in Google Earth? Did we look at it or something? I don't know what we looked at it when we were in briefing. We looked at a... Oh, there it is, yeah, in the dotted line. So it does show an incline that people can do that so that they don't actually have to necessarily come into the school to park or the new parking area, however the arrangements will be made. So there is a facility for it.
And it is off the highway. Well,
yeah,
that's part of it.
That's the point
it's off the carriageway.
I was trying to ask you to demonstrate. Thank you. Thank you for that. Are there any further questions? Oh, I think we're still on that, aren't we? Yeah, no? Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor and everybody. So we now open to debate. Who'd like to have a go with this one? Thank you. Start me off. Councillor Stringer, thank you.
Yeah, I've got very little to whinge about. Hooray! No, it's actually a very, very well-designed scheme, I have to say, from my perspective. A couple of little niggles, which I'm pretty certain we can iron out. The orientation of most of the dwellings, even though they don't have solar panels on them, will be able to do that in the future if they wish, because they've all got air source heat pumps. Vast majority are facing the right way, look a relatively reasonable design, etc., etc. I get the point about the drop-off area. It's just the original one that just looked a bit more user-friendly, I think, from the point of view of the community. Not many parents like to commit to drive into a school to drop off because they always think of those gates as being almost sacrosanct, or some of them do anyway. Equally, the issue about parents parking I won't go into here because that's fraught with danger. But we need to reinforce with parents that opening a passenger door into the traffic is a breaking the highway code. Whereas the driver likes to pull up on the pavement but doesn't mind exposing the child to that risk. I find that quite remarkable. But anyway, we can't iron that out here. I don't think we can condition here that there be extra parking on that community area. But if, of course, it was transferred to the community, that community could work to do that, unless others see differently. I would, however, like to condition that we get rid of those silly fake chimneys. They serve no other purpose than to detract from the really nicely designed brickwork detail that we're putting in there. Why would you want to distract from them with these odd bits of plastic that are covered in bits of tile or bits of brick that are on all of the houses anyway? I mean, it serves no purpose other than to distract and create a problem in the future. The warranties on GRP-based chimneys are half the warranty on the tiles. So actually what you're going to end up with in the future here is a problem on those ones when they break down, because they do, that won't have in other houses and stuff. So frankly, get rid of the fake ones. If we could get rid of the fake ones, I'd actually be in a position to move approval on this, as per the officer's recommendation. I would like to sort of flag up, possibly as an advisory note, there is a real opportunity with this landscaping scheme here to do a brilliant project with that school. And if you're going to be introducing some fruit trees, don't worry about Vietnam. We've got enough varieties in Suffolk, including the Earl of Stradbroke apple and all this kind of stuff. I don't know what the relations are like between Laxfield and Stradbroke, but you know, I'm sure they're lovely. I think there's a massive opportunity here to do a brilliantly sort of co-produced scheme here and involve the children and stuff. But certainly some locally based fruit trees along that. Whether we can condition that here or not, I don't really know, but I think that's a golden opportunity to do. So if we could, you know, discourage the fake chimneys and suggest that there's be some local fruit trees in there, I would certainly be minded to move approval as per recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Muller?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do personally like this particular layout, and I would be more than happy to second Councillor Stringer's approval.
Well, he hasn't approved it yet, so if you want to make a first, you can.
Okay, yeah. I would be happy.
If we could move removing a chimney and what have we. We haven't got on to design yet. We haven't debated that, whether we were moving it or not. So we haven't... I'm sorry, I am correct, am I legal? That we haven't... Yes, I'm correct. We haven't had an official approval yet.
Okay.
Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I tend to agree with what Councillor Stringer says about the false chimneys, and I'd be happy to see the false chimneys actually removed. And if that can be conditioned, I would happily recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
I think what we're talking about here is design, so I'm not sure we're quite onto that. Can we remove chimneys?
I would say we could. A chimney that is there only for decorative purposes, we could ensure is removed from the scheme.
Would it need to be a condition as such?
Yeah, we can do that by condition.
Right, so there's the answer to the question. So do we want to go back and give Councillor Stringer the joy of... I think we've actually had 2 ifs on it, haven't we? So we haven't really had a proper resolution because it was only if it could, tacit agreement. So I need a formal agreement now. Thank you. So you can fight it between the two of you. Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to move approval on the basis of conditioning that we do just get rid of the false chimneys, and if we can have an advisory note about the landscape condition, that we could condition local fruit varieties as opposed to the Vietnamese-based ones, would be really, really helpful. Thank you, Chair.
And so, Councillor Muller, I think you're back to... I'm happy to second. Right. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Warboys.
In favour of Councillor Stringer's motion, but I would like to just sort of support the I'm not sure if it's an addition or a point or what about the clay pan tiles rather than the cement-based ones. They, from the point of view of they weather much better than the concrete tiles, so future inhabitants would benefit from it.
See, that's why it's a good idea to have the debate before we jump in with the proposal and seconder, because we're now going to have some more conditions and go back again. Do we want to have a little bit more of a debate before we amend? Am I entitled to do that?
Yes, so,
yeah. So can we just have a bit more of a debate before we start adding bits and bobs? Councillor Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It'd be nice if they spent the money they saved not putting chimneys on solar panels, but I don't think that's our position to have that as a condition. I agree with what councillors have said already. I'm a little bit concerned about the planting down the left-hand side of where the footpath. So you've got the footpath going from the car park right the way through to that corner where Chestnut Tree Farm, and that joins with another footpath. I think we've got a better picture somewhere. Yeah, right where that left-hand yellow triangle is. I'm a bit concerned about having a footpath that comes out there and joins onto that footpath across that road, round that bend. I think the planting around there might be... So the tree right on the corner, which is the big problem, right on the tip of that yellow triangle, is an existing tree. So there's not anything that can be done about that. We'll just wait for the...
As part of the outline vision display, there is one that goes around that corner. I should have mentioned that, Councillor Caston.
Oh, okay.
But let me just go back to it if I'm going in the right direction. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So in here, there's visibility displays in here. So you're right. The landscaping scheme will have to sit behind those lines. So if you're standing there, you will be seen.
Yeah, I think that could maybe be made a little bit safer with maybe there's trees going in there. Obviously, the main tree that's a bit of a problem exists, but the trees going in there, that could be maybe kept a little bit clearer so that people coming off that footpath and joining the other footpath can be seen a bit easier and can see cars coming the other way. The other thing about this scheme was the drop-off point that was said to be too much of an impact on Chestnut Tree House. There's actually, I think it actually has less of an impact because there's a lot more tree planting because of that drop-off point. I think this is a good design, don't get me wrong. I think this is quite acceptable how it is, but it does seem like that frontage could be better. There could be more trees in there to have less of an impact. But also, when the drop-off point was there, that does actually bring down a lot of that impact because it's quite thickly planted around the edges. I don't know what councillors think about that. There's quite a lot of the impact of this site is mitigated by those dense trees. I know you want to have a footpath through there, but it's just something to think about. But my real concern was that footpath joining onto the other footpath and walkers stepping out onto that corner.
Thank you for that, Councillor Caston. And Vince, you wanted to make some sort of response on that, please?
Sorry, because we have a condition relating to the landscaping detail, we could ensure with Hopkins that corner we did set the trees back.
Anyone else wish to comment before we can add on bits and bobs? Anyone else wish to speak? No? So are the proposer and the seconder happy with clay pan tiles instead of concrete? So can we...
Can I point out that, okay, so let's just be clear on the recommendation here, because we have the recommendation in your papers, we have the correction we've made verbally, which included the pan tiles already because we've put further details and materials being required, so we don't have to go back on that one. The only addition beyond what is in, if you want to get back to that page would be useful, thank you, is that notwithstanding plans submitted, all non-working chimneys to be removed. Yeah. And the only other note I have so far, in addition to what that says and what's in your papers, is to change to local fruit trees when appropriate, as opposed to non-local fruit trees that may have been suggested. Are we clear?
Is everybody happy with that? Did you get that?
Chair, I do have that, but it's not as well worded as Mr. Pateman G, I'm afraid.
So can we have Mr. Pateman G's wording then?
I was going to say, I think the only way you'll have to excuse my rather mundane way of putting it, is condition for the removal of fake chimneys. Is that acceptable?
That sounds good enough.
Okay. And then I've got the and an informative note regarding landscaping. Landscaping for the inclusion of local varieties of fruit trees included in the mix where appropriate.
Sounds good enough.
Okay.
And wasn't there something about the lighter landscaping by the footpath? I think that you'd want that in, wouldn't you, committee?
The landscaping needs to take into account the visibility display in any event. So
that
that's
sounds
already...
that sounds better.
We can put a note on that as well when we deal with that.
I'll just go through it very quickly, Chair. So I've just added that the landscaping needs to take into account the visibility on the bend of Framingham Road. Is it Framingham Road? Is that the right road? Yes, okay. If you're happy with that, Chair, then I will start
Let's go to
the vote. So the vote is now in progress, members. If you could go to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of the agenda and go on the subsection of attendance/voting. You may need to scroll down, but the vote will show in a light blue colour. Thank you, Chair. That is all votes received, and that is a unanimous vote for the proposal.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move swiftly on to the last one, but I think who... Ah, there you are. I couldn't see you behind. Thank you, Vince. Right, so we move on to the last one, and we've got Alex, who is going to present the case for us, please. And that is remove the exist... Have I got that one right? Where are we? Yes, you're presenting it. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This is item 7C on today's agenda. The application site is Mid-Suffolk Leisure Centre on Gainsborough Road in Stowmarket, and this is a full application to remove the existing roof-mounted gas-fired air handling unit heating system and install a ground-mounted electric-powered air source heat pump and air handling unit on a concrete base to the rear of the building. Here we obviously have an aerial view of the site, an existing building. The wider view, you can obviously see a large portion of the surrounding area consists of residential dwellings. We have the primary school up here, just sort of sharing a border with the rear of the site, as well as the high school as well. We have the provided red line site plan, again just showing the car park and the existing building. Again, in terms of constraints, there are no major constraints on the site. We do obviously have the listed building nearby, but informal comments from Heritage essentially said that they had no comment to make, and therefore we consider the proposal is not sufficient to warrant their involvement. So here we have a layout plan. Obviously the red circle indicates the location of the existing system on top of the building. It's visible from some points in the public highway, more so around this area in the car park. And then obviously the green circle indicates where the new system will be to the rear of the building. Just going back to the last one. Obviously, being to the rear of the building at the back, it's going to be further away from the residential dwellings, and we're also going to be less visible than the existing system. I think it's, on this point, worth noting as well, the Council's Environmental Health team have no objection, essentially, to the proposal. In terms of its noise impact, all they've requested so far is the inclusion of a condition requiring the submission of a full noise impact assessment. This is, again, just to provide further assurance and to make sure that the proposal would not have any significant impact on residential amenity. This is more of a technical site plan, but at least we can see the size of the unit. Again, given its location, it's not going to be particularly visible. And again, another one where we can see some of the internal works as well, some of the internal ducts here. Again, just on another final point, the proposal would obviously see the existing fossil fuel heating system removed and replaced with a more efficient air source heat pump. This is noted in the design and access statement, and it is also stated that the proposal would reduce the carbon impact from the existing system by greater than 55%. Given all of this information, the officer recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions as noted in the officer's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for the officer? I think we're all stunned into silence with the technical side of things. I think Councillor Field would have given us some information. He's very technical. We don't have any objectors. We don't have anything from either of the ward members on this one. Do you have any questions at all? No? No? In that case then, can I have a proposer in a second? Oh, well, does people want to debate it first? Sorry, I forgot about that bit. People are shaking their heads. No. Councillor
Thank you very much, Chair. Personally very much in favour of this. I think this is the way forward. I think it's really important that we perhaps do have a condition regarding a noise impact assessment as a condition. And apart from that, then I would be happy to approve this.
So we are adding that in, and you are making the suggestion that you propose it. And Councillor Stringer, I can see you're
absolutely. If air source heat pumps are now permitted development, one, why is this application here? And two, that's for residential owners.
It's council owned, isn't it?
Answering my own question, sorry. John, you were so quick. I would suggest, does it actually need that condition if this item is permitted development?
Ultimately, yes, there is permitted development, but even that permitted development has criteria, and that criteria does actually have, I think, a noise criteria in it in any event, but that obviously applies to residential. In this case, we have to deal with a commercial premises, and we have to deal with the application proposed, and we then have the no end of control that we may wish to apply to it. In this case, given the location, we've considered it appropriate to have a noise condition and judge that accordingly.
I think also with it being owned by Mid Suffolk District Council, it makes sure we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So, did we get a seconder after that? Councillor Gould.
Happy to second.
He wants to go. Thank you. So I don't think no, I shouldn't say that. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion? If not, we can go to the vote. Not being flippant on it, but seriously, if anybody wants to speak to it. No, right. Would you like to open the vote for us, please?
Just to check, Chair, so the additional condition is that additional condition as follows is a noise assessment condition. Is that the correct wording, or what? Because I didn't quite catch what.
we don't need an extra one, do we? Because we've already got, there's already a recommendation, so there's no extras as recommendation.
Oh, apologies. My misunderstanding.
Oh, well, my misunderstanding as well, because...
So, with that, Chair, it will be as per the official recommendation in the papers.
Yeah, it does actually say submission of full noise impact assessment, so we've got it there already, right?
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress, members. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and that is a unanimous vote for the proposal.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for everybody's input today. Did we have any site inspection requests which need to be reported to committee?
None, Chair.
In that case, then, I formally close the meeting. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.